from the Germans and the Irish to the Indians and Chinese and Africans, they are all creating spaces they wish existed. That is my motto in life. Create the spaces you wish existed. They are all creating restaurants, museums, they are creating media outlets, they are creating. And to be in the diaspora is a beautiful superpower of living in between. That hyphenated experience, whether you agree with the terminology of the hyphenated experience, the reality is that you have one foot between worlds, between countries, as you discover your own roadmap. If I realize that I have Bantu heritage, I haven't taken a test, that'll be an invitation, an opportunity for me to build a relationship there, to explore it. And the second thing about being in the diaspora is, it is only when you decide. It's a commitment and a consciousness. You can be of heritage and not be a member of the diaspora. The diaspora experience is an activation of your relationship. It isn't a VIP pass or someone acknowledging you. Okay, the diaspora experience is very personal, and it's something you claim, and it's something you discover. It's your commitment and your consciousness. And that commitment and consciousness isn't to be marked or judged, or there isn't a milestone. Okay, it's a continuous journey. Now, knowing that and knowing how diasporas create spaces they wish existed, let's talk about how we use our diaspora experience for impact, for good, because that's the theme of this summit, right? By the way, Biafra, somebody, I'm going to need you to give me time. Great, we're good, you know? I want you to think of how diasporas use their experience for impact and where that impact is. If you were a member of a diaspora, if you would identify as one, where is it that you would want to make impact? Is it in the ancestral homeland, or is it where you live? Because we are hyphenated, we feel like we're in between, right? Fatima?
That's a question I've been struggling to answer for myself, but I think my ideal situation would be to be a bridge.
A bridge.
Not creating things that belong in one space, but because I already belong in both worlds, creating things that belong in both worlds.
That's right. You belong in both worlds. It's a superpower. It's a beautiful superpower. And for us as Africans, we have been penalized. We even penalize ourselves. And yet we see all the other diasporas. I mean, there's still some of this same thing in the South Asian world, in the colonized worlds. We are othering ourselves, and that is trauma. That is a trauma-informed approach. But if you can see being in between as a superpower, you begin to use that as your asset, as your skill. And that becomes the skill you bring to the workplace, the skill you bring to community, the skill you bring to your family, to your places of worship. It's the skill you bring to advocacy. And it's a skill that we are really beginning to value finally in the policy world, in the public policy world. Because like I said, governments have diaspora policies. And until now, it hadn't really been a thing. It just existed. I've done a lot of political organizing for African diaspora progressive spaces, like in the electoral space, African diaspora for Obama, you just name everything. I'm on the left side, right? And every time we organized, it was like the policy world didn't understand. And again, DC, think of DC for those of you who understand the DMV area. They didn't see that African diasporas were like really politically organized. And it was because we were forcing ourselves to choose one or the other. A majority of African diaspora communities, immigrant communities, specifically, were organizing for foreign affairs, for foreign policy issues, because it was about the U.S.'s relationship with the homeland. The other part of the African diaspora that was second-gen and multi-generational, they had domestic issues. They want to talk about job creation and taxes and housing and education. They want to talk about personal civil rights and foreign policy. And so we saw this divide politically, and it was because diasporas did not know that they could sit in between. So we would run these organizing trainings, and we would put all the elders, when I say elders, I mean first-gen immigrant, mom and dads, we would take the first-generation immigrants, so-and-so, so-and-so, and give them the respect. And then we would pepper the audience with second-gens, people born abroad, because a lot of this was specifically to specific African communities. And when we would try to define what our issues were, first it was like you could cut a knife through it. First gens only wanted to talk about back home. And the second and third gens were like, okay, look, we got a lot of things we need to also make sure. Climate change, a global thing. And so understanding that in between now means we can build our political agenda with a hyphenated space. That's just an example. So being in between is the actual superpower of the diaspora experience. And what's missing and where we're going is strengthening your ability to explain the in-between as a member of the African diaspora, okay? Because truthfully, other diasporas either have the benefit of race and white supremacy on their side, they're voting as a Caucasian bloc, except when it comes to Germany and Poland and Ireland. You will see diaspora policy in government on those countries. You will see like the Irish-American advocacy for U.S.-Ireland relations, but we never hear about it. So for us, we're actually shortchanging ourselves when we don't come forward with this hyphenated agenda, with this middle ground agenda. It's a superpower. So the second thing is being in between also helps our homeland governments understand our needs. I did a study about 10 years ago with the Nigerian government on what it would take to incentivize Nigerian American health professionals to come to Niger. And we did this, like, we did interviews, we did phone calls, we did focus groups, we traveled. I was in Atlanta, I was in Houston, DC, New York, we were everywhere. And we just sat with Nigerian health professionals, Nigerian diaspora health professionals. And a lot of the conversation was around their industry, around health as a profession, and what it would require. And a lot of it was also about what they would be leaving behind as a member of the diaspora. I'm leaving behind my mortgage, my credit card debt, my student loan. I'm leaving behind, in some cases, the professional standards on the health industry. There were very real, concrete reasons why it would be difficult to leave the United States to go to Nigeria. So I agree wholeheartedly with the idea of brain gain, but diasporas are going to have to be much more sophisticated and nuanced in explaining this is what it means to be in the middle. I can come, so guess what the 3 reasons were? In a nutshell, the findings from the report, the 3 reasons. Number 1, assurances of quality control for their profession. Medical professionals were saying we cannot abandon our commitment to HIPAA, our commitment to making sure that there's the right equipment and resources. Okay, so first profession, beautiful, expertise. Second one, safety and security. I need to, because for them, they were saying, moving through the towns or moving through the area, the locale, my physical safety, I need assurances. Okay, fine. Guess what the third one was?
Pay.
Pay?
Yes.
No, pay was raised. Pay was raised because they said we still have to pay for our mortgage, our credit card debt, our student loan debt. You know, this notion of what we actually carry in the diaspora. The third one was transparency and accountability over governance.
That's true.
Corruption.
Corruption.
They didn't want to say corruption. They want to say, we want to be able to understand how the government is making decisions.
True.
That's a more democratic principle. That is what they're also bringing that from the diaspora. They may have it in Nigeria as well, but these were the reasons this is what needed to be resolved to incentivize going back. So we have to be careful not to romanticize going back. We have to be careful to romanticize other youth activism, because truthfully, the diaspora experience includes returnees. Have you heard of the word returnees?
Yeah.
Returnees, even someone who's never been to the continent, when we go to the continent, you're a returnee because you have this umbilical with the continent that you are reconnecting. But the truth is, it's in the day-to-day. It's in the potholes, it's in the Nairobi. Who's been to Nairobi? I've been there for 2 years. Love Nairobi. But there's also traffic jams. There is the reality of what happens when the cars are at a standstill. People breaking your car in gridlock. You know, the reality of day-to-day risks, understanding that diasporas, we are the ones that can contextualize that for the homelands and for here. Okay? So now I want to close out by thinking about, well, what does that mean of how you drive impact from where you are here? Short of going to the continent. First and foremost, storytelling. I never understood the power of telling your own story. Because as an Eritrean, it was ingrained in me. I was born pre-independence. But also just as Africans, as diasporas, as humans, telling your story. And that doesn't mean I was born here, I moved here. That doesn't mean that. It means you understanding what motivates you, what you've experienced, and the invitation for people to meet you. And telling your story begins wherever you want it to. But don't gloss over yourself. When we were running with Nafsa, we ran the Diaspora Advocacy and Policy Influencers Program, DAPI. The program was a 1-year training on how to do advocacy for U.S.-Africa relations. Knowing that the members of Nafsa were at all different levels of familiarity with advocacy. Guess what? We had built this curriculum and said, okay, this is what it means to do advocacy on the Hill. This is what it means to go to the UN. This is what it means to help U.S.-Africa relations, okay? And then we realized one glaring omission that changed the way I did everything moving forward. It's the idea of a diaspora as a constituency. As a constituency, this is a political term, but what does constituency mean to each of you? Constituency. A what? Voting block? Mm-hmm. A clan? Mm-hmm. A group that you represent? Mm-hmm. That's right. A group that elected officials are accountable to. A constituency is a block, whether it's voting or not can vary, but a block of people that individuals are designated to represent their interests and who those individuals serve. So there's a serving and accountability here. And constituencies can be, you can use it in different ways. It's a consumer, it's a community. It's the idea of you having to serve and represent and being held to account. And as diasporas, we don't see ourselves as constituents. So if you had to sit with somebody who basically runs your day-to-day life, how do you sit with them as a constituent? You tell your story. And you telling your story, you can do that in the halls of government. But you also do it when you are in the classroom, when you're meeting friends, when you're talking to your teacher. You do that when you're in the workplace. You do that because you are a part of a block of people, and that diaspora hyphenated journey or that discovery of self is the story. And being in between is not an apology, and it's not a shortcoming. So I always say that to be in the diaspora is a journey of self-discovery. Okay? Everyone's is different, but yet we all have the same sort of desire to maintain ties to our homeland. But in many cases, especially for the African diaspora, it's a trauma-informed experience. And it's a story of narratives being passed down. You know, I as an Eritrean, our struggle for independence has made me align and understand diasporas that went through conflict and war, or that are still going through it. Palestine, Armenia, Syria, like Biafra, Igbos, like I can lean into diasporas that have memories of war and conflict because that is my narrative. And my job is to decide how much of my story is shaped by that narrative that was passed down and how much of my story is my hyphenated experience. So when you sit and talk about your identity, it's really more about belonging and how you belong, how you assign yourself your belonging. And the problem is that for our people, there's so much unhealed trauma and suffering that we have been denied the right to heal and to learn and connect with each other. And so the burden, the disproportionate burden that's placed on us is because our governments are realizing and building policies to help us heal in many ways. But also the governments the countries that we live in are realizing that there is a lot that we've been denied, including memory and storytelling, including the ability to connect and reconnect. Now, and that's not necessarily their job only, it's our job to advocate, but the US government, the African government, the European governments, they're beginning to take some measures of responsibility. But truthfully, this is about us and building something with our ancestral homelands. Okay? Now, in the last 5 minutes, I want to open it up for just a conversation, a discussion. How does this land? What does this mean for you as a change maker? What does this mean for you driving impact from where you are? I don't want to assume policy and politics, but as a diaspora change maker, you can be an entrepreneur, you can be an academic, you can be a storyteller, you can be a creative, you can do anything with your voice and your time, talent, and treasure. That is essentially what making impact is about. How are you using your time, talent, and treasure for good? So let me turn it over to you. What does it mean for you as a member of a diaspora, and what questions do you have for me? if any? Okay, remind me your name.
Sam.
Sam.
So I would say what it means to me is like using my purpose in life and what I've learned in life to help give back and help empower like younger generations, people younger than me, so that they stay ahead of the curve.
Mm-hmm. Tell me a little about your story, Sam.
So I'm Liberian. I was born in the U.S., but it was one of those situations where my mother just came here to have me, and I grew up in Liberia for the first 8 years of my life. And since I was 8 years old, I've been living in DMV, and luckily got the opportunity to move back to Liberia for about 9 years, from 2012 to 2021. And so through that journey of moving back, getting reconnected to the continent, the culture, I feel like one of my purposes in life is to help bridge the gap between the two cultures, the diaspora and the culture on the ground. So that's why I'm here, and trying to find ways where I can do that, and I feel like it's my purpose now.
Yeah.
Part of my purpose is to
That's right.
spread the culture to people in the diaspora and other cultures as well.
Yeah. Bridge building, just as Fatima said, being a bridge, cultural ambassador, storyteller, an advocate. Being in between is a superpower. You don't have to choose.
Exactly.
Yeah. Anyone else?
Yes. Thank you, Sami. I have completely been blessed by what you said. I wish this was a podcast. I hope it's being recorded.
Yeah.
Is it being recorded?
Daniel, I'm here.
We need to
She said
work.
I'm here.
We need to work in it. Why I say that is because when you mentioned the level of impact, before now I assume that impact is what you leave behind. But just listening to you and listening to how you're able to tell us that everybody's diaspora journey has uniqueness, you cannot discountenance that. You doing that is you're already devaluing yourself. You don't know what it is. That true impact from what you've said is what continues even after your generation is not there. The immigrant's child of the immigrant's child of the immigrant's child is the effect of what has been originally planted, still continuing to create more positive, more forward-looking thing. That is impact. So, but like what you said, and I hope people are listening, that what you see as impact is what your ancestors left behind. Then you're just in a cage, you're fooling yourself. It is, have you picked up from what they have done? And when you are long gone, when nobody will remember, will those positive attributes continue? If it now continues, that is the impact. So thank you so much. For me,
Yeah.
this is really, is just changing everything I think, how we are being taught
Yeah.
some terms are, who a true diasporan is, and I agree with Aisha, she's right, that we are that bridge because we've seen the Western world just like you. You know when that will not work in Eritrea, it will not work. You know when, oh no, this will work, but we have to explain it in a different way for them. And it is only a diasporan who has tested both realities, who has seen fire, who has seen snow, that can tell you, I know what cold is. This is not cold. This is just rain. So thank you so much.
Thank you.
God bless
Thank you. Thank you. Thank you. So not all diasporas are going to even try to connect or be in their homeland. A diaspora experience is how you use your time, talent, and treasure for good, from wherever you are, to build a bridge with your ancestral homeland.
That's true.
And it can be all kinds of things, and it can be very private. But what I want for you to remember is life is short, and rather than spend the time of our life on this earth trying to prove what we are, the goal is to share who you are.
True.
And the more you discover your own journey, the more you pursue that on your own. It's a very private thing. Countries like the Horn of Africa, Liberia, parts of African history are so painful.
Yeah,
And unpacking that collectively is very difficult.
true.
But at least individually, exploring what does it mean for me to be here, but have ancestry that links me there? Is that important to me? And even if it's not, what about my life comes from my ancestry? I'm telling you, food, when you look at soul food and you look at Caribbean food and you look at West African food, It's the same ingredients.
That's true.
So the heritage and the culture and the lineage, whether or not you care about that particular country, our umbilical as people of the diaspora never cuts. And remember, the diaspora experience, I feel my heart aches for us when I realize other diasporas do not have the trauma, the collective trauma. They have different kinds of trauma, but when you see Asian, East Asian, South Asian, in some cases Arab, Western European, Eastern European, their diaspora experience is buoyed by the fact that their homeland has a certain level of policies.
That's
there's
true.
still division,
Yeah.
there's still othering, there's still tension. But I remember I was actually teaching a DAPI course, and I'll close out with this. And I had someone in my house helping me, a repairman, and he was a Bosnian immigrant, and he was listening to this conversation specifically about the African diaspora experience. And when I hung up, he said, "Somehow, I'm really sorry. I'm trying to be professional, but I don't think that the African diasporas have suffered the worst." I said, "Tell me why." And he said, "Well, I was Bosnian. I was da-da-da." And he went into his own journey of having to flee. And I said, you are completely valid and correct in the harm and the pain that you have experienced and that your people have experienced. The African diaspora collective trauma is carried in our bodies for over 400 years, even when you're an immigrant.
That's true.
Because you realize the history and the trajectory that you're on. It's a part of collective trauma. And he didn't feel comfortable talking about race and white supremacy. I said, you have a history that is your nationality, a moment in time for your nationality. You have a war that you can hold on to, just as Eritreans do. But collectively, the African diaspora has been denied a clear entry point, a clear access, a clear knowledge, and we carry that in our bodies. Even for my own family that has migrated from Eritrea, to understand that I carry it. They may or may not. They may not. First generation immigrants may not choose to acknowledge the collective trauma because it's beyond their capacity.
That's true.
But for second generationers, for people born and raised abroad, as Black people, there's a collective that you are a part of just by nature of your formative years. Okay? I have to close out. I have time for one more question and then we're done. In the Caribbean culture? There is. Yeah, overwhelmingly the Caribbean community, CARICOM, the different countries in the Caribbean are already Pan-Africanist in many ways, and they're aligned with the African Union. Haiti, of course. Jamaica, specifically the country, many of those Caribbean countries already have diaspora policies for their own Caribbean communities, but then they also have a macro strategy of Pan-Africanism and Black solidarity. So Barbados, you've seen the leadership coming out of Barbados. There's a Pan-African buy-in already in our consciousness. And for the parts of the Caribbean that are not historically African, there's also Indian migrants, there's Chinese migrants. There's recognition that the country's history is linked to Africa. So when I do African diaspora work, it is all of us. Afro-Asian, Afro-Arab, Caribbean, Afro-Latino, African-American, African immigrant. Like it isn't just African immigrant, and I think that is what I wanted you to all walk away with, is sort of the universality of the diaspora experience and just how broad and comprehensive the African diaspora experience really is. I encourage you to locate yourself in that diaspora journey. I am excited for you to unpack what we discussed today.
Yep.
I do a training. I do a 3-week training in October of every year online. It's called the Diaspora Leadership Program. And those courses have everyone, not just one community. So if you're interested, you can find out more about that DLP, Diaspora Leadership Program. And you can find me on my socials. The website is diasporaacademy.com. Okay,
The socials.
On all my social medias, it's Samhara Raya.
Okay.
It's just my name. Made it easy. My name is enough. But if you are interested in exploring this further, we do courses, we do coaching, and we do consulting. So thank you all for your time. And I'm excited for it.
Wow.
Can we get another round of applause?
Yeah.
I hope you all enjoyed the and take some of those questions, reflections with you for the rest of the programs. I think it is important to ground oneself, to assess one's position so that you know where is here and where do you want there to be, right? And then there's the process and the price. What do we really need to do to navigate that journey to get to that chair is there. So really love Samhara, y'all. Definitely
Love
take
you back,
advantage. She's giving me access to the officials and those courses. And again, I had the pleasure of taking one, and it has changed the way in which I walk in my diaspora journey.
Yep.
And so now we are at the food portion of the program. A Taste of the Continent has arrived. The food is here. So we'll ask that everybody head on upstairs. Well, back to that first.